I understand now. It's not about themes and such. It's the very type of narrative this is. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do have to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact, here we are for you to receive 15 minutes on my thoughts on why, from a certain point of view, this ending for Chainsaw Man is actually perfect. And I'm not entirely being overdramatic. I just think it's a shift in perspective I've had to possibly gaslight myself. So let me gaslight you too. So hold on, let me start this timer right here, right now, and explain my thoughts. Come on, where is it? Okay, so obviously, from the most base idea, looking at the ending of Chainsaw Man Part 2, it's an ending, all right. It's an ending. And a lot of people, myself included, have had many issues with the ending for how unresolved it is, how it erases the original timeline with just little remnants here and there, how it doesn't really make too much sense with how Bushido's powers have been established so far, how meta-narratively it doesn't feel like it fits the general theming of the entire narrative, of like, you know, Tenji's progress as an individual, Asa's progress as an individual. It literally undoes everything, right? And restores things that shouldn't be restored, and like doesn't make sense even in the slightest from like that perspective. And honestly, I still do 100% agree with that when I'm looking at the narrative from the view of a hero's journey. Or I should say a story that is meant to have a good ending. But in reality, what I feel like, in order to rationalize all of this, the many different conflicts deep in the depths of my soul, the way I'm looking at the narrative now, and specifically this ending, is that it is the bad ending. The bad ending, because Chainsaw Man was never really a hero's journey. It was a tragedy. Like a Greek tragedy. Now, admittedly, this thought came to my mind because I was watching a whole bunch of overly sarcastic productions videos again, specifically the Medea video, right? And how ultimately the first part of Medea's story is a hero's tale, an epic, a positive, wonderful time with Jason and the Argonauts, wonderful. But then part 2 of Medea, essentially the play about Medea herself, is a tragedy. So, that made some synapses fire in my brain, because let's look at part 1 as a whole. Part 1 is a hero's journey, right? Obviously, Denji isn't complete by part 1, that's why it's called part 1, and we got all of part 2, but looking at that, it is specifically within that narrative framing, right? Denji goes through development, Denji goes through struggling, but in the end, he comes out greater than he started the narrative, in a place that he is better off overall, with more control, more freedom, more agency over he and himself. It's good. But what is part 2 as a whole? It's very, very debatable to argue that part 2 fits into the typical narrative structure of a tragedy, because for the longest time, it feels like a hero's journey. But the reason why I say, if you look at the ending of part 2 more so as a tragedy and a bad thing, it's actually relatively good. And let me explain why. As ideal, I was about to say idealistic, but I suppose ideal alone would work. As ideal as this world seems, right? Denji is alive, he doesn't have to worry about the terrors and horrors of being Chainsaw Man. He still is able to fight and do his job, and he's able to live, even if he still does have a bad heart condition, this and the third. It looks wonderful, but it's actually really, really bad, right? Like, logistically thinking about it, Denji losing the one thing to make him an individual is bad, you know? He got called Chainsaw Man, leading to this very hilarious meme that's been propagating all throughout the community. But regardless, his individuality is gone. His control is gone. His development is gone. Everything that made Denji Denji, the character we've been following for 200 chapters, is gone. And same thing for Asa, a character who we've now been following for over 100 chapters. More than we followed Denji in part 1, we have Asa, another character who had all of her autonomy and agency completely erased and removed and annihilated. That's bad, right? That's sad. That's not actually a very good thing. On top of that, we have things that also just aren't necessarily that good, such as Denji going back to this physical state, and also, well, let's just say, probably not being in the best of conditions to live a very happy and healthy life, considering he doesn't have the hybrid immortality like he once did. And now that he's just a grunt for public safety again, well, it's very likely he's not going to live a very, very long time. He will have a short life, in comparison to the very long life he could have had in the original timeline. So all of this is ringing as a bad thing, wrapped up in a good thing. And I think that's why I'm starting to like it a bit more, right? Because if we look at it from the lens of a tragedy, the whole point of a tragedy is that the hero tries so hard to avoid a certain fate. And technically, Denji, through the actions that were admittedly not his own, avoided a certain fate, which was presumably the end of his existence, or at least the continuous existence of battle and destruction and chaos in this world that is oh so twisted, thanks to Pochita. But, of course, by doing this, Pochita has consigned him to a horrible fate. A fate that he has no control over. A fate where he is stuck in a place that he probably would have never wanted to go back to if he would know. But he doesn't know. And I think that's the tragedy. That's the dramatic irony. The idea that Denji put in so much effort, so much work, lived such a hard life, went through the ups and downs, helped as many people as he did, lost as many people as he did, went through all that, and then the narrative, the heavy hand of the writer in the form of Pochita came down and said, no, you can't. You are better when you failed, when you were in despair, and when you were in the trenches, bro. I'm gonna send you straight back. It doesn't matter how much work you put in now, it doesn't mean anything, and I'm going to make sure of that. That's exactly what Pochita does, and that is sad. That's a tragedy. Very similar into the way that, once again, in Medea, the play, Medea loses literally everything, even though she does actually get a relatively happy ending towards, like, the grander scheme of the mythological pantheon. Regardless, the circumstances are still not the best for her, just as they aren't the best for Denji. Because Denji lost everything. Everything he ever was, everything he ever could be, that's all gone. Everything Denji ever was is gone. And I've seen many people hold hope and cope for either A part 3, or C, that's not how letters work, but regardless, looking for some sort of hope. Especially with this right here, the idea that Pochita is still there, you know? Maybe he's just not the Chainsaw D anymore, as there is no starter for Denji to pull. Or maybe this isn't even literal, it's all metaphor, this, that, and the third. Regardless, Denji lost. This is the bad ending. For another example, if Greek tragedy isn't necessarily clicking with you, because you haven't watched Peak, go watch Overly Sarcastic Productions. If you somehow found me and didn't find them, I don't know how, but go watch. But regardless, the other way to interpret it is, have you ever gotten the bad ending in a video game? But the bad ending is framed like a good ending. Think about it like that. For reference, there are two games that come to mind with this idea. And they're both Persona games. Funnily enough, I've not played either Persona game. I haven't played a single Persona game, but I know the endings very, very well. So, slight spoilers for Persona 5 and Persona 4. Skip ahead. But there are certain choices that you can make in that game to get to an ending. Not the true ending, but an ending. And in both of those choices, specifically, especially in Persona 5, it's really, really good. Everything's positive. Everything's swell. Everything's well. The problem's been taken care of, and that's what happens here. Everything is over. Everything is resolved. Seemingly. On a base level. But we know that everything isn't resolved. We know that we don't have answers. Denji didn't have answers. Denji doesn't have any control. We know, ultimately, thanks to the context of the original timeline, that Denji's fate is going to be infinitely worse here. We know that despite this veneer of positivity and greatness and happiness, everyone's alive, everyone's back, Nights is here, Power's here, everything's great, Asa doesn't slaughter Clucky, everything's good. We still know that their previously existing traumas, oh, they're still there. And any progress they made on them, entirely undone. That's really, really bad. Almost like that's something that probably would have been resolved if this was not a tragedy. At the same time, we do have things like Nayuta's fate, which, unfortunately, is most likely gonna be a negative one. Remember what Kishibe, if you remember Kishibe existed, because Fushimoto sure did. Regardless, if you remember, Kishibe literally warned us that, hey, even if this isn't literally Makima, a Nayuta raised by public safety, which presumably this is still just gonna end up as another Makima. And that's not a good thing. Just as Denji being reduced down to nothing more than another number to sacrifice himself for public safety isn't a good thing. Also, even Power's return comes with a really sad bit of context. If you'll remember, at the end of part 1 in the original timeline, Power had a specific request for Denji in exchange for saving his life. Specifically, to find her new self, befriend her new self, meet her, and live that life. But now, with this incarnation of Power, the Power that never went through all the development, the Power that doesn't have an Aki, the Power that doesn't even really match the character that left us all that time ago, that's still sad. And it's very likely she's never going to reach that point. None of these characters are even capable of reaching the points of character development that they reached in this new timeline, because one of the most core cruxes to it is gone. Pochita isn't here. Pochita left them. Pochita essentially abandoned them. And thusly, they shall all be left to terrible fates. A Yoru, who no longer exists, in merger with Asa, means Asa will never break free of that shell. Sure, she didn't crush Glucky, but that doesn't mean anything in terms of the rest of Asa's sadness, despair, and terrible history. It means literally nothing at all. She still has all that to go through and is still very likely to perish. Very, very soon in a world like this. As we've seen, without Yoru in many instances throughout Part 2, she would have fallen. Heck, the very inciting incident of Part 2 is Asa presumably undergoing the fall, if you will, for another Persona reference there. And obviously, I already covered Denji's very presumable short life after this, considering what he does in a world without any control that he was trying to develop. And power, and Naoyuta, and all that is why I actually like it now. Because Fujimoto typically doesn't write happy endings, right? Fujimoto typically does write tragedies or sad fates or terrible things. It is one-shots in his longer narratives now, seemingly. So, if I look at it from that perspective, and I treat the narrative and the ending as this pseudo, well, not necessarily the bad-good ending, or the good-bad ending, it works for me. It works for me a whole lot more than it did than when I was thinking about it from, like, a logical perspective. Honestly, diving into the whole themes and such meme that's been going around with Chainsawman, the themes of this are horrible. Because essentially, Pochita says, man, Denji, or Pochita, and by proxy, the themes of the narrative are saying, man, you suck so bad. In order for you to suck not so bad, I think you should go back to a place where you were in your worst. And ultimately, that tells you, at least to me thematically, and tell me if I'm reading the themes and such wrong, this whole narrative of like, yeah, you were better off when you were in despair means don't try to leave your bad situation or do everything in your power to escape it and develop into a better person. No, go back to the way you were and stay like that forever because that's the dream you deserve, because that's the only thing that makes you happy, because you're a perpetual being of sadness. I don't think that's the theme that Fujimoto wants to push. I mean, like, maybe, I don't know. Once again, it is despairing and fits into the whole tragedy aspect. But no, I think the real theme is cherish what you have and realize that you could lose it at any moment, especially with things that are beyond your control. Because remember, Denji's whole point throughout Part 2 was developing into a person who could have control, who could develop his own world. Specifically, one of the biggest points of development we had for Denji in Part 2 was his internal self changing from the little child Denji to high school age Denji, the one who reached out to Asa and said, hey, let's create our own world. And he couldn't do that, because Denji fell short. He failed. He didn't meet the criteria for the true ending, so he fell short. Things beyond his control decided the fate of Denji's life, just as they always do, because Denji was never going to succeed. That's not what Part 2 as a narrative is about. I suppose Part 2 as a narrative is about the failings of man, the inability to self-actualize. And I do want to say this in particular. I see people say Denji had no development, and I'm sorry, I don't think that's true. He definitely has a cycle of development where he is definitely taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But in the end, he still moved forward. Denji in Chapter 1 and Denji in Chapter 151 are completely different characters. I think that's the sad fate of this, once again building into the dramatic tragedy of it all. That he did go through so much. He put in so much effort. He made all those connections and he lost it all, but he was still growing. He was still developing. And honestly, even with them presumably getting absolutely viciously violated by what is now commonly being theorized to be like the Dream D, they could have survived this one way or another. We know that hybrids, especially weapon hybrids like Pochita / Denji / Chainsawman would have been fine. Presumably, same thing with Yoru, at least one way or another, and by proxy, her bond to Asa. They could have made it past this. They could have done more. But, unfortunately, they didn't meet the criteria for that true good ending. They fell short. It's a shame that they fell short. It's a shame that this is the end, but it's the shame that makes it good. Because not every story needs to have a true ending, a true happy ending. Rather, every story needs an ending. And Denji has this ending. An ending where he failed to achieve anything he actually dreamed of, and was forced back into a position where he shall ultimately live a much shorter and less fulfilling life, all because things beyond his control took control away from him all over again. And sure, once again, as I keep emphasizing, it may look happy, it may look joyous, it may look amazing. We may want to click our heels in celebration, but ultimately, it's a terrible, terrible fate for the boy who wanted nothing more than a little bit of control over his life, and the boy who wanted to create his own world. And from that point, I think I find this ending more perfect than it could have ever been for the boy who now doesn't even have a chainsaw to call his own. But in that, I find that sadness, that despair, that lack of fulfillment, it's bitter. But a strange bittersweet knowing that for everything Denji did, it still wasn't enough. And ultimately, he fell short. But, of course, those are my thoughts. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment down below. Do you think I'm absolutely wilding and have lost my mind and I'm huffing the thickest, meatiest, heaviest amounts of copium next to Dream Theory itself? That next chapter, we're actually going to get another chapter. It's going to be chapter 233, this time the third. Or do you think I may be spitting? And if you looked at it from a different perspective like I did and heard what my reasoning was, maybe you do like the ending now. And if you already did like the ending, does my interpretation of it as a tragedy fit with your understanding of the ending? Or do you view the ending differently and still have a positive interpretation of it? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Oh, no, thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure that you thought I forgot, didn't you? If you made all the way to the end of this video, please leave a world with no chainsaw. A world with no chainsaw in the comment section down below. But now I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that link to notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also even to have a Patreon below where you support me for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reactions, the issues I happen to review, ad variations of all my videos, early ad free access to all my videos, early ad free access to not just all my videos here on the main channel, but on the second channel that got reaction, linked in the description down below, along with and also in the upper right hand card. And on top of that, I do have a link to my Twitch down below. I stream every Friday 8 p.m. ES Tizzle, and whoo, sometimes we go through it. Like right now. But regardless, I also do my Ko-fi down below where you can drop 5 minutes to a short video, which essentially is just like videos of this length. If you ever want to wonder what a short video was, it would be like a 15 minutes my thoughts video, or even shorter, depending on what it is. But on top of that, you could do 25 beans for a long video, which would be like the regular length of a review. But regardless, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. Alright, lady, give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2MA, Buddha Ura, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, the Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Tim Thomas, Kaving, RXN, Logan Guzman, Dead Mean, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, BNA DNA, Edwin Igbinoba, Straw, and Tavius Mitchell, Superflame Zero, Weary Exile, Alex Kenny, Todd, The Practical One, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Jagoda, Plant Crone, Blast, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, Multi-Batman Superman, Salims, Joe Bean, Sleepin' John, The Young Family Pastel Pandora, Mo City King DKG, Andreen Bonnet, Akulari Babatunde, at JDog2656, Union Eye, Marisol Boyd, Funny Dude, Athenzi Shear, Magic, Sino King, Sheesh King, Aswin Hedi Presetia, JMB KD, CCC, Enzo, Kitty Liddy, Gerald Harris, Dino, and Victor Jacobs. Then, a big thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Dured Zoen, Kevin Encarnacion, Lil Kodo, Midnight Lord 21, and Sean. Then, lady, thank you to our Ink tier member, Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. Then, lady, thank you to our digital art tier members, J Warrior and AZ Void. And lady, a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons, Walking Minoz,